Thanks for watching The Thought Criminals, named after the resistance to the totalitarian thought police of George Orwell's 1984, which we now refer to as being woke. I'm your host, Rachel Alexander. I'm a weekly contributor to Townhall and other sites and the editor of Intellectual Conservative. And this is my mall, Ralph Benko, who worked in or with the Reagan, W. Bush, and Trump White Houses. He's a weekly columnist for Newsmax, co-author of the Capitalist Manifesto, and co-founder and executive chairman of the 186,000 member Capitalist League Facebook group. And I want to remind everybody to go to thoughtcriminals.ning.com to get more of us and subscribe for email updates. Today, we are going to discuss an article I wrote about fathers being the key factor missing from both the abortion debate and mass shootings. And then we're going to pivot to an article Ralph wrote about what the Roe v. Wade decision means. And then we're going to touch on blockchain and why it's not something that older conservatives should be completely fearful of.
Or even a little fearful of, Rachel.
So
the blockchain is not sinister. It's a technology, and the fire can either cook your food or burn down the house. It all depends upon how it's used. So
kind of like guns. So
kind of like guns, yeah.
So basically, I got to interview the legendary Dr. Warren Farrell. He's one of my favorite people in the entire world because he writes about the boy crisis, how we are completely neglecting our boys, and this, overemphasis on how everything has to be about women is actually hurting men. And nobody cares because we're in this era where everybody just wants to beat up on, men and, white men, whatever. And so he's come to the assessment of these two key issues hitting us right now. All these school shootings going on and abortion, with the Supreme Court poised to reverse Roe versus Wade. He said the key denominator to fixing these is absent fathers and not considering fathers when it comes to trying to decide these issues. So when it comes to mass shootings, he said the one thing that these school shooters all have in common is lack of fathers in their life. And he's looked at the 7 mass shooters in the 21st century who killed more than 10 people. And of the 6 we know about, because the 7th we don't know, this person's with the boy's background, they all had almost none of their fathers in their lives. And nobody's talking about this. Everybody, he said, wants to point to things like video games, mental illness, guns, and there is some truth to things like video games and mental illness, but the overarching common denominator is this lack of a father. And he even said to me just 6 months ago, he had a young man contact him and say, your writing has saved me from committing a mass shooting. This young man said he had actually written a manifesto and he had planned it all out. And he said, you validated what I was thinking, because what Warren says is, he says that these boys just want to be heard. They want somebody to listen to them. They don't want to, go to school and be taught that you are responsible for toxic masculinity and your only value is being an expendable soldier in the army. They just want to be heard, and they think that guns, the bigger the better, is the way to make them heard. And so he's trying to turn this around, and he's written several books. He's even written one, I just came across this yesterday, on the gender wage gap and why men actually can make more money than women. And a lot of it comes down to women just don't choose the type of jobs that pay extra. They don't choose to work the extra hours because they'd rather stay home and have flexibility with their children, things like that. And then what he says about abortion is that when we look at the abortion debate, we consider the woman's right to choose side versus the baby's right to live, but we never consider the father's role. Why doesn't the father get a say in whether this baby lives or not? And so he believes that that should be just as important of a right. So if a woman, is thinking about having an abortion, she needs to tell the father, and then the father he has to commit to, raising the child for 18 years or contributing child support, visitation, whatever it ends up being. And then the woman just needs to commit to the 9 months of pregnancy. And that's kind of the status quo in some sense right now when it comes to the woman's choice, because right now a woman can go to a fire station, drop off her brand new baby, and she's not even on the hook for child support. So that's kind of where he says we're at. And I think it's about time someone starts speaking up for father's role when you're having a baby, because everybody just thinks, oh, the fathers get off the hook. No, they don't get off the hook, because you can, bet your bottom dollar that, the court system is going to go out there and he's going to find the father and he's going to make him pay child support for at least 18 years.
Well, okay. Look, I think he's oversimplifying and exaggerating, but I think he has a valid point. I think he's not arguing it very well. I think
you're just hearing my version of him arguing. He's much more well-spoken than I am, believe me.
Well, I'm sorry. Tell us the name of this scholar again. Tell us his background and tell us some of one of his
name is Dr. Warren Farrell. And if it sounds like I'm doing a horrible job, I don't think I'm doing that bad, because immediately after my article came out, I had somebody from Missouri email me and say, based on reading my article, he is going to go ahead and start a program to help struggling fathers in an area, a small town that's 95% Black. And that is another theme of Farrell's piece. We are coming up on Juneteenth, and Black fathers are, more likely than white fathers not to be involved in their children's lives.
Well, I don't know the statistics about that, but I do know there are all kinds of elements of systemic racism that make it harder if you're Black to be as socially engaged as you can if you've got the privileges of being white. So I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that there was a collateral familial damage based upon the endemic racism that we're slowly but surely getting rid of, but that still exists and still represents a blemish on our society that all conservatives should be up in arms about and should be taking active measures to make sure that all of the systemic racism that persists from slavery through Jim Crow on down to today, even though we've been doing heroic work at reducing it, any element of it needs to be eradicated. So
I don't know if I go as far as agreeing with you that there is systemic racism. What I do think is a problem is there are some judges out there in the family law system who they see a nice pretty white girl come in who's the mother, and they see a Black man come in, and who are they more inclined to give the child to? And you've got all kinds of statistics that back this up. That nice pretty white mom is a lot more likely to get the kids. So I don't know what you call that, because obviously not all judges are like that, but
I call that systemic racism, and you should too. And I know I'm very, very far to the right of you, Rachel, and that's why I am so militant about eradicating systemic racism, because that's a ultra conservative issue. But I want to lure you over here to the bright side of the force and have you join me in my crusade against systemic racism.
Well, when the left talks about systemic racism, they are trying to talk about right-wing people being racist, right? That's their meaning of it. And in this case, when you've got left-wing judges in Detroit and, other big cities, they're siding with the feminists, okay? So this is not right-wing people saying things that the left is construing as racist. So I just want to be clear on that difference when it comes to talking about systemic racism.
I understand that, Rachel. We all know that I am far to the right of you, which is why I am
saying that, because you told a Washington Post writer that you're the second most conservative
man in the world, right? And therefore you can understand why I would be so militant about eradicating systemic racism, because that's an ultra conservative issue. But to switch here a little bit, I think what he's doing is he's missing the forest for the trees. Okay, there's trees and there's a forest, and he has a very legitimate point. But I'm going to tell you a little story about back when I was in law school before you were born. Or maybe you were, maybe you were
Let's
in.
not go there. Let's not.
Big
I
Ted
just
and
like
Pet- and
somebody for
Pinafores
posting
up
my
there.
age on Facebook, so let's not go there.
And there was I used to have lunch in the college, Boston University dining hall, because it was all you could eat very inexpensively. And I was then, like now, poor. And there was this cute little couple, 17 years old, cute as a bug's here, who we all sat at common tables. I said, "So what's your story?" He says, "Oh, we're getting married this summer." Like, what, you're 17 years old, you're getting married? Isn't that awfully young? And he said, the young man said, "Not in my family, not in my community." And I said, "Well, are you part of some kind of special community, Mormons or whatever?" He says, "No, this is just the culture of my community. We all get married when we're 17 or 18 years old. And my father is 35, and my grandfather is 52, and my great-grandfather is 69, and my great-great-grandfather is about is pushing 90." Okay. And I said, and by the way, we all live in this same town. And if you don't live, and you know what? You always have a father or a father's father or a father's father or more who is looking out for you, who always has your back. And so and by the way, on every street, if your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents don't live on the street and, sort of wave hello to you and goodbye to you every day, okay, I guarantee you've got uncles and aunts who do. It's a very, very close-knit community. And you know what? We've got no crime, we've got no welfare, we've got no drugs, because part of the deal is that a loving parental figures, and by the way, he wasn't being disrespectful of the moms and the grandmoms and whatever, the conversation just happened to go down the paternal line. They not only do they look out for us, but they look after us to make sure that we're not misbehaving, and there's nowhere to hide. So as a matter of loving social integration, we get really very well taken care of. Everybody's really happy. We marry young, so there's no promiscuity, and there's nowhere to be promiscuous because we've got our parents and our grandparents right on the block watching out for us at the soda fountain, and our aunts and our uncles and our cousins and our brothers and our sisters. And so it just turns out that by virtue of this extremely close-knit community with strong parental involvement, both paternal and maternal, it was a recipe for both low social morbidity, a recipe for social health, for professional health. They find these kids the right jobs for them. Oh, little Johnny, yeah, he's really good with his hands. Let's get him a job at the carpenter shop, or let's get him Johnny, he's really great with cars. Let's get him a job with Uncle Joe's gas station or whatever. So they know these kids beautifully well, and they care about these kids, and they look after these kids, and they prevent them from getting into trouble, and they keep them, and they also make sure that they're given opportunities to flourish. And by the way, this is not just anecdotal. There's a wonderful article in the New Yorker, that right-wing rag, about Orange City, Iowa, in which also talks about how keeping the social fabric well integrated, having close relationships, is a absolute recipe for social health and happiness. So I think there's a bigger picture, is the fathers being expected to be involved, having a right to be involved, being it just the ordinary thing for them to be involved in the lives of their children from conception throughout the entirety of their lives, gives both dignity and gives security to society. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we should be mainstreaming as normative, rather than something being controversial, saying fathers should have this right and this responsibility. It's more than just a should. It's more than being punitive about it. it's a recipe for happiness. It's the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay.
Right there in
Okay.
above
So while that community sounded absolutely wonderful, like it should be a model for everybody else, and I am very happy to hear it, you do admit, though, the vast majority of parents who try to have children at age 17 and get married is not going to work out. Like for most people, they need to get married when they're older, at least the way our society is set up for everybody else.
I know, but their society is set up in a way that supports it and makes it natural and makes it easy and makes it flourishing. You are absolutely right, Rachel. For most of society today, it would be hard, just too hard. It'd be economically hard. It would be socially hard. It would be politically hard. It would be culturally hard. All the deck is stacked against parenthood, fatherhood, motherhood, particularly at a nice, young, organic age when people should be having their kids. So, but you need to build a society that supports that. Otherwise, there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Okay, so let's pivot over to your two articles. Might as well move to your article on abortion first, since we just touched on that topic. And what were the points you were making? I thought one of the best ones was how, you know, it's not even a democratic decision that resulted in Roe v. Wade. You know, it's just 5 judges in black robes. It wasn't, you know, and you point out how the liberals always scream about how you're going to ruin our democracy, but you know, they're the first ones to run to the courts to make changes that way.
First of all, let me just, you know, this is a sticking point for me. I'm a liberal. A liberal is someone who believes in liberty. You mean a progressive, the left, scream democracy, democracy, democracy. And you know what? They push all of their initiatives hardest in the least democratic of the government institutions, the courts. Roe v. Wade was 5-4, a 1-vote majority that basically said, no, you cannot, unborn babies do not have a right to life under the Fifth Amendment, right? Fifth Amendment says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So we had 5 people out of 300 million or 250 million, or however many there were 50 years ago, who basically said, 5 out of 4 said, we're stripping the status of personhood from this unborn baby. Not a person, no right to life. They took their Fifth Amendment constitutional right to life away. That was one of the least democratic events in my 70-year-long lifetime. And for progressives, so-called progressives, which are, it's just a euphemism for fanatics, to basically be screaming for democracy and then using the courts and the career civil servants and the independent agencies, all of which are the least democratic of any of our institutions, to ram their agenda forward is absolute, it makes a parody of their claim to be pro-democracy, and we should be calling them out on it.
And I'll point out that progressive is also a term that they now use because left wing has become so discredited. I had my emotional lefty friend who doesn't talk to me anymore. We're back to talking, because remember, he's the one who will quit talking to me for months at a time because he gets mad over political arguments. So he gets really mad when I call him a lefty. So they know it's been discredited, and so progressive's their latest word. But 10 years from now, they're going to come up with something else. So with that being said, let's go on to your interesting.
Wait, before we go on to the blockchain, let me just say this: that in my article in Newsmax of approximately 2 weeks ago, I call this twilight zone. I call Roe versus Wade twilight zone law, because it's rooted not in the Constitution. The word abortion appears nowhere in the Constitution. Okay, I call it twilight zone law because it's rooted in the imagination. And frankly, what they did was they talked about the
numbers of the Constitution. There's no right to privacy either. That's not the exact same thing as the Fourth Amendment, which they try to confuse.
Right, so I'm just saying that I believe this is an Achilles heel on the part of the left. Okay, when they want to scream democracy, then you could say, great. There were 30 statewide referendums as to whether marriage should be a strictly, exclusively heterosexual institution or not. 30 out of 30, the majority of people democratically voted to maintain marriage as a exclusively heterosexual institution. I don't care whether you believe that's right or wrong. All I'm saying is that was the democratic will. And then they took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, by another 5-4 decision, said, oh, no, that marriage, it would be bigotry to confine marriage to heterosexual relationships. And there again, they took the least, a one-vote majority of the least democratic, the intentionally least democratic of the institutions, to change thousands of years of custom to based upon the opinion of 5 people. So the
and
left,
it's crazy when you look at their decisions like Roe v. Wade that they're now reversing. You know, everybody acts like, you know, abortion is just such the most important right. And in the reality, the court is like, oops, we made a mistake, you know, that we should have never done that. And so it just.
look, it bothers me because very few people actually talk about what's at stake here. Personhood is a political construct. There is no such thing as there's theology and there's politics and there's philosophy, but personhood is something that's assigned by society. And when the founding of the United States took away personhood from Black people, that was seen as a massive injustice and a scandal, as it should be. When the National Socialists, the Nazis, took away personhood from Jews, my collateral ancestors, in Germany and in Eastern Europe, places like Poland and stuff like that, and created the Shoah, the Holocaust, that was considered to be a scandal of monumental proportions. Okay, you can make the case that an unborn child is not a person, in which case there is a sacrosanct right for the mom to do whatever she wants. Or you can make the case, which I personally am persuaded by completely, that an unborn child, particularly at viability, is a person and therefore cannot be deprived of the right to life without due process of law per the Constitution. Okay, but for them to basically make up the mysteries of the universe, okay, and to say that the states cannot make a decision as to who is a juridical person is absolutely unsupportable. And that's what I call twilight zone law. And I hope, if in fact Roe is reversed, as we have good reason to believe through the leaked opinion it will be, that will be the beginning of the end of twilight zone constitutional law.
Well, it is so great, Ralph, to agree with you on an issue on our show for once. And I think we're going to agree on the next one, blockchain as well. I'm a techie, as you know, used to do tech support for a living. So I believe we've got some success here.
Yeah, well, it's hard for you to keep up, Rachel, when you're as conservative as I am. Clearly, occasionally you're a conservative, just nobody to the right of me. So I understand we have disagreements from time to time because it's really hard to be as conservative as I am, and I don't blame you.
We should take a poll of our millions of viewers, and find out who they think is more conservative based on this show, you or me.
We should. Should we send them postcards, or should we ask them to email their ballots into us? Who is more conservative? Ralph, the second most conservative man in the world, according to the Washington Post, Benko, or Rachel Alexander?
We'll just have them post comments under the video.
Post comments. Okay, great. So an acquaintance of mine, her name is Amelia Gardner Powers, or Amelia Powers Gardner, is the county commissioner in Utah County in the state of Utah, the second largest county there in Utah, the home of Provo, Utah, and the home BYU, Bring Your Own, Brigham Young University. Okay, and she is also one of the national thought leaders at using the blockchain in order to in order to keep government small and to reflect the will of the people in a way that can be audited and that is meticulous, so that it can't be fooled around with. So she's been doing things like putting merit certificates on the blockchain, so that there can be no doubt as to the fact that you own that merit certificate, even though it's on file with the government. That's not the government's property, it's your property, and you have untraveled access to it, so the government can't go jerking you around. So what Amelia is doing, and I regard her very highly for this, is she's a pro-life, pro-marriage, pro-gun, full spectrum conservative, and she is putting conservative values on the blockchain over there in Utah County, Utah. So I just wrote a column basically congratulating her on using this ultra modern technology for these most traditional values that you and I and she share.
People don't even realize, I didn't realize till I read your column that blockchain was being used for things like this. And didn't you say she's running for office?
She's running for re-election. She's involved in a spirited primary. The mail-in voting started yesterday.
What's she, wait, I didn't catch. What's she in office for?
She's the county commissioner.
County commissioner, okay.
Okay. Which is actually a big deal job in Utah counties. I'm not an expert in this. I assume it's like the county executive here in Maryland, but it's a very high-powered municipal office, and she has managed to blend in a way that I found them admirable, and which I wrote about in my column as finding admirable, this most advanced technology, the blockchain, together with these lovely traditional values. So I just wrote a column giving her a shout out for managing to blend something old and something new. Don't know where she is on the something barred and something blue part. You'd have to call her up and ask her that.
Good. We're glad we can inform people about that, because I'm pretty techie and I didn't even know about, those types of uses. So kudos to you. And that will wrap us up for this week. Thank you for everybody for watching, and we will see you next week.